We're live.
Okay, I hope we have people out there.
Oh, I can see you, so that's good.
Okay. Can you tell who's on YouTube or?
Anne wrote in the chat, so I know she's on. I don't know. Yeah, this is new technology to me. I don't know. Sorry.
Well, I can see Paul's lips moving, but I can't see him. I can't hear him.
Sorry about that. What I was saying is maybe in the chat you might want to put for people to identify themselves, so then you'll know if there's actually anybody out there besides Ann.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Or I guess we could just say it now because they can hear us.
Please. Okay, so I can type in this title. I wasn't sure.
Okay, are you getting anybody? Well, we'll get started and hope that we're not talking to ourselves. Good evening. My name is Mike Bro, and I'm the chair for the Regional Family Support Planning Council for Monmouth and Ocean counties. This evening, we have some really dynamic guest speakers. Patricia Brennan is the director of the Community Care Program waiting list, and Paul Aronsohn is the Ombudsman, and I'll just leave it as the Ombudsman for people with disabilities, because we don't have enough time to do his entire title. That being said, I'll start with Patricia, ladies first, and just go ahead. Okay, so first off, I wanted to say thank you all for just inviting us. I am here representing Jonathan Seifert. He actually was not able to attend tonight, but I am here. So I am the director of the waiting list, special projects, fee-for-service conversion team, and a whole host of other things over at the division. But I am very excited to be talking to all of you and wanted to share with you, and John also wanted to tell everybody that as the division's representatives, we really do value the Regional Family Support Planning Councils. We value all of your input. We take it back. We really think about it. One of the other things that we have been doing is getting some of the tools for the community of practice and for supporting families. Rebecca's part of the leadership team for that with me. And we have been getting some of those tools out to all of the Regional Family Support Planning Councils and using them. And now families are using them to go to different provider agencies, to go to their school districts, to go anywhere in the community to just use the tools and get the really infuse a different way of thinking for everyone, because it's not a new, form, tool, or training. It is a way of thinking. It's for us to all say, why do we do things a certain way? And especially now because of COVID and we've had to pivot and shift how we do everything. The division's really looking at that, and we want everyone to really look at that. Like, why are we doing things a certain way? Could we do it differently? The beauty of us being able to do things virtually now is that there isn't ever, these meetings we can have without having to travel 2.5 hours just to get to a meeting at nighttime. We can have them in our own living room or, guest room that we do work in, and don't have to go anywhere and really have some great innovative conversations at the same time. So one of the things that I want to say to everybody is that as we are getting the community of practice tools out there so that all people can be able to live, learn, work, and play within their communities, however it may be, whether it be virtually, whether it be in person, whether it be however it may be, because now everything has changed, everything has shifted. We are really starting to look at things in a different light. So the division is also looking at things in a different light. We haven't been
back to our own offices. I mean, I go in like once a week, get some mail, get a couple other things, do some printing. And we figured out ways to connect with our own teams virtually and really outreach to families and figure out what the next steps are. But we really, truly value the time that we have with the families, and we really want to listen and hear what it is that you're requesting and looking for. I know in one of the last meetings we talked to the families, the action planning group. They said they really value the fact that no has not been the answer response, because now it's been like, let's see how we can make that happen. Let's see what we can do to make it work, because we have to kind of be flexible and change things up right now. So I look forward to answering any questions you may have. I know this is a question and answer session. I'm excited to start sharing the tools for our next steps with all of the regional family support planning councils. And as we move it through the division leadership and different provider leaderships and support coordination, and everybody can start to really change the way they're thinking and infuse some new concepts.
Thank you, Tricia. Paul, it's your turn.
Great. Thanks so much, Michael, and good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Paul Aronsohn, and I do have that long title, which I'm actually going to say. It's New Jersey's Ombudsman for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities and their families. It's a position in an office that was created just under 3 years ago, actually in December of 2017 by the state legislature. It was signed into law by Governor Christie in January of 2018, and I was appointed by Governor Murphy in April of 2018. So I've been on the job about 2.5 years. And it's a position that was created, an office that was created, it was born out of the recognition, a few things. One is that folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities often need assistance getting the services and supports they need. Two, that families are often very involved, but families are often overwhelmed. And three, the system is very confusing. And so rather than trying to overhaul the system, they created this office, and our job is to basically serve as a resource, to work with individuals, work with families of all ages, and just try to connect them with the resources that exist in New Jersey. We are very fortunate in the sense that there are a lot of resources, both for children as well as for adults. It's just sometimes very difficult to sort of navigate the system. It's very complex. It's often changing. And so my job is to work with individuals and families to sort of connect you and get you where you need to go. It's a relatively independent office in that I'm technically in but not of the Treasury Department, which means I get my paycheck and email through Treasury, and that's pretty much it. I actually have a physical office in the Department of Community Affairs. I think that's just because there was some like extra real estate available there. But it's really important that it's somewhat independent, because the folks that sort of created the office recognize that the issues that affect people with disabilities, like everyone else, don't just reside in one department. It's not just human services, it's not just children and families, it's education, it's public safety, it's health, transportation, it's everything. And so by having a little bit of independence, it gives us that system-wide perspective, and we're better able to serve individuals and families on one issue or multiple issues. As I noted, the position was created in December of 2017, and getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if anyone else hears that. Michael, maybe you could just mute yours.
Yeah, I'll try that and see what happens.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. Is that better?
You're unmuted again.
Oh.
There you go. Okay, so the legislation that created the office has a list of responsibilities and things the position is supposed to be doing, but we basically put it into three categories, three buckets. One is to serve as a resource for individuals and families, and that often means serving as a troubleshooter. We've learned that over the 2.5 years, folks generally come to us when they're kind of lost in the system, or they don't know where to turn, or they get a decision that they don't really like, and they want someone to help them sort of navigate their way through it. That's our job. And so we spend a lot of time troubleshooting, working with individuals and families. Sometimes it's on a specific issue, sometimes it's on several issues. Second, we work with individuals and families to look for ways to improve the system, to look for ways to make it more accessible, more user-friendly. That could be small issues, that could be larger issues. And third, and very important, very overarching, we work to try to help make sure that the voice of individuals and families is heard in a meaningful way on decisions that directly affect them, but also in the larger policy discussions, looking to provide platforms and opportunities for individuals and families to sort of have a seat at the table, if you will, where and when decisions are made. I noted that we have a physical office in Trenton in the Department of Community Affairs. I don't know if I've been there more than 15 times, I think, in 2.5 years. And that was I did that intentionally because when the office was created and when I first started, really wanted to sort of take my time figuring out what was sort of the gap, what was the niche that this office should fill without duplicating all of the other good work that was being done elsewhere in the system. And one of the things I recognized early on and made a point is that personal touch and the ability to go to people, go sit with them in their homes, go meet with them, for a cup of coffee in their, in their local Starbucks, visit their schools, visit their workplaces. And so I've spent most of my time before the pandemic traveling the state. And it's really wonderful because it's a blessing because it gives me and our office the opportunity to really see, feel, and hear sort of the challenges that families are facing. And so we, all over the state and meeting with individuals, meeting with families, have the opportunity to meet with advocates, state legislators, county disability directors, anybody who's involved in disability issues, we try to meet with, and again, often try to go to them. One of the responsibilities in this position is to do an annual report that goes to the governor, the legislature, and the commissioners of human services and the Department of Children and Families. And I've done 2 of those reports so far, and I've really tried to use it as an opportunity sort of to tell the story that individuals and families are experiencing. I use most of the report to talk about the systemic challenges that families are facing, as well as the individual issue-specific ones. And I'll be more than happy to share it and love feedback on it. But to me, it's a real opportunity to sort of tell other policymakers, tell legislators, journalists, anyone who will take the time to read it, some of the challenges that individuals and families are facing. One of the things I do note in that, and I think it's very important to keep in mind, is by the very nature of this office, people come to us when there's a problem. So while we hear the success stories, and there are many, that's not why people come to us, and so because of that, the report, focuses on more of the challenges rather than everything else that's working in the system. What else can I tell you? Since the pandemic started back in March, we've been, working very closely with our colleagues in DDD and Children's System of Care and the Department of Education, as well as very closely with our colleagues in the governor's office, and the Department of Health, really trying to sort of connect people and, to the resources they need, trying to make sure that there was a two-way flow of communication. In other words, folks that are making decisions within DDD, for instance, anytime a family member would email us, we would share that with the assistant commissioner. So he has an idea of some of the views and some of the concerns and questions that families have, recognizing that a lot of the decisions over the last 7 months have been made on the fly because this has all been new to us. And so trying to share the family voice, the individual's voice with DDD, with the Office of Special Education, with the Commissioner of Health, and then taking the information that they were putting out and then sending it back to individual families. So trying to keep the communication going, which is, as anyone knows, is very important in a crisis situation and in a pandemic situation like we've been experiencing. So with that, that's it in a nutshell. I'm more than happy to take any questions here, any comments tonight. And I always encourage folks, if you don't have questions tonight or you want to talk more, please reach out to us. Michael has got our contact information. Send us an email, call us, we'll talk, we'll set up a video meeting, I'll come visit you, whatever. Oh, and the last thing, let me just point out, up until February this year, I was alone in the office, but now I have an associate director of the office, Christine Bacter, who joined, and right before the government sort of shut down, and it was perfect timing. She's been a great addition to the team, and both of us came to our positions, not just with professional experience, but also with family experience. In my case, I'm a sibling. All 3 of my siblings have had a mix of disabilities. I had a sister who had developmental disabilities. And so through her and my mom as her caregiver, I learned a lot about disability, became very passionate about it. Christine is a mother of a 22-year-old who's on the spectrum. And so she has those experiences. And so we both bring that kind of family, personal experience, that lived experience, if you will, to our work. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Michael.
I'll remember to unmute this time. I'm not used to this. Okay, I have some questions, and I will start. Rebecca, do you have anything? You're muted.
I do not. I think that Anne is sending them to you from YouTube.
Okay, then I will start with the first question I have. And I'm assuming this is going to be for Patricia. It says, why aren't families doing an NJCAT reevaluation, assigned a DDD rep for assistance instead of having to request one? After we explained our situation, our rep made us aware that only one area of the NJCAT had changed, and the other two were not likely to change. Our application was denied for this reason, but because the rep knew our needs would not be met through this reevaluation, he successfully appealed, and we now have the appropriate services. The purpose of the evaluation is to determine a budget that actually meets the needs of an individual, not a group of categories that they fit in.
So what I can tell you is that the New Jersey CAT is, not the most perfect of instruments, but it's the, I don't know any other state that has said, we've got the best instrument as well. It is statistically sound and proven to be valid. And that, there is a whole entire team of folks who work on those reassessments. There's a help desk. There is, you can write in and get some assistance as needed. Your support coordinator will be helping guide you through the process. So, we have people in place to assist you through the process. And if families ask, we are more than willing to do whatever we can to help guide and have somebody assist them.
Okay, next question. If I were to request a replacement for my daughter, what is the approximate wait time? Am I able to tour a few supportive housing apartments to help me make a decision?
Okay, so that, since I am the director of the waiting list, that is, so if your name were to come up on the priority waiting list, you would be reached, every year we reach a certain amount of people based upon the budget. In the next two weeks, we were sending out letters for the next 200 people that are reached, based upon the budgetary, the fiscal year starting in October this year. Usually it's the year. And then if you met the level of care for a community care program, you would be able to access that budget. If you were means supports program, you'd be able to access that budget, and access a housing voucher, et cetera. And your support coordinator can help guide you through that process as well. The waiting list right now, there's over 2,000 people on it. We are outreaching to folks that have been placed on it about in 2009 at this time. So it is, it depends upon emergency status. It depends upon meeting specific criteria. It also depends upon being reached on the priority waiting list.
I'm looking for the other two questions I got via email. But another question, we found out only by word of mouth that people who are on who are on PPP, Personal Preference Program, who are living in the home with the person with disabilities, is allowed to get a live-in exemption, so they don't have to do their time reporting via telephone or computer. The information wasn't publicly, as far as we can tell, publicly distributed. Can you comment on that?
For PPP, that's not a DDD service, so that that would be something through DDS, Division of Disability Services. So it would be on their website, not ours. That would be my answer for that.
I could say, so I think they're talking about electronic visitor verification, and I don't think that hasn't been implemented yet. And I know they were looking for an exemption. I don't know, Rebecca, I don't know if you know if they got that, but I know that was a part of the discussion.
There is an exemption for people that live there because they assume they're going to be there. They don't have to electronically verify that they've arrived there. And that starts in January 1. Also will start for self-directed employees under DDD.
This is listed as for you, Paul. What is the possibility of having cameras installed in group homes? Is there a possibility of a law being passed? To be able to maintain contact with family and treating sources is vital, especially for someone who does not communicate or understand the spoken word. A total shutdown lockdown was appalling and is still moderately limiting because my loved one will not tolerate wearing a mask and currently spends days sitting in a lounge chair, sleeping all day, and is expected to sleep all night too.
So currently, providers are permitted to put cameras in group homes, and some do. Some providers do it in all the group homes. Some providers do in some other group homes. They do in different common spaces. There is legislation though that's been introduced by the New Jersey Assembly Human Services Chairperson Joan Downey to make it more readily available. And I don't have all the details with me right now, but it's legislation. And again, I don't know the status of the legislation. It hasn't been passed yet or at all, but it would make it so cameras could be more readily available in common areas in group homes. And it would also make it so if an individual or a guardian wanted a private camera in a bedroom, then that would be something that they could work out too. But under current law, under current regulations, it is permitted if the provider wants to do it, and there are guidelines accordingly.
Thank you. All right. Currently, housing vouchers are only being issued.
Excuse me, Mike. I got an update to the question about EVV. I just wanted to, Zinky McGeady had texted me and said that information can be found on the DMOS website under frequently asked questions, the information about EVV. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, Mike.
No problem. I'll start over. Currently, housing vouchers are only being issued if someone is in imminent danger of homelessness or if someone is moving from one provider agency to another. When will housing vouchers for people wanting to move from the family home be issued again?
Housing vouchers are being issued. It just depends upon, so for anybody who's reached on the priority list, anybody who's able to request them through the support coordinator, they are able to be issued.
Okay, those are the only two questions I've gotten so far. I can't see the chat and I haven't heard of any others yet. But I do have a question, and this is probably not in either domain, but schools, it appears that schools try to graduate people with disabilities when they turn 18. Not all school districts, not all areas, but some school districts want to get people with disabilities out of their classes at the age of 18. And is there anything being done to educate families beyond the normal trainings that a lot of families can't attend to tell them or explain to them what the rules are for people with disabilities in education?
I can tell you that we are still virtually holding the Pathways to Adult Life sessions.
And I'll add to that a couple of things. First of all, because we deal with a lot of students, also families, and one of the things we try to encourage them is to know their rights, because a lot of families may not know their rights and that they do have the right to education up to age 21. But I'll tell you, the whole transition issue and that whole period is so fraught with frustration and difficulty and complexity. It was something that, I used to be mayor of my town, and I used to work with families all the time. And even in a town like Ridgewood up here in Bergen County, where there's a lot of resources, we have transition coordinator and everything like that, families still felt like they were falling off the proverbial cliff. I think it's definitely an area. I know DDD, I know the Department of Children and Families, I know Department of Education. Everybody's been looking at sort of what we can do to sort of improve the Department of Labor, work that, make this sort of these transition years better for families and individuals. And one of the things, and I include this in my annual report, I really hope that DDD sort of looks at the idea of allowing families, individuals and families, to sort of access support coordinators beginning at age 18. And I say that because one of the things we've looked at in terms of those transition years is, every school district does it differently. And so, some do really well, some really prepare students beginning at age 14, sort of for what life after 18 or after 21 will look like. But some don't have the resources to do it. And I think, and I really believe that a lot of individuals and families just fall through the cracks, and they do fall off the cliff. And I think one of the things we need to do is find a way to sort of, provide a resource. And I suggest a support coordinator could be in a different form, but somebody needs to be with those individual families beginning at, I think, at 18, if not earlier. But to really sort of be there to help them answer questions about education, about continuing education through 21, and then beyond, maybe about employment, about what competitive employment means versus other types of employment, about legal status, guardianship, power of attorney, health, moving from pediatrician to an adult doctor, transportation. There's so many issues that families have to deal with, and in those critical years, and they really don't have a resource if their school doesn't have the transition coordinator, and if they don't have access to support groups and other things. So I think it's something, again, we've all been sort of, wrestling with, but I think we need to find a way forward. And I think one of the answers would be to make support coordinators accessible to families at age 18.
Because my personal comment on that is that we spoon feed parents during the school years and have people there to support them and tell them, give them an idea of what they need to do and how they need to do it and what their child needs. At 21, they get there and we say, okay, now you figure it out. And in spite of the fact that we try to educate them, we have a tendency to just leave them out on a limb and say, all right, it's your problem now. The school system can't help you anymore. And some get it, some don't, and some just sort of flail around hoping that someone will come and guide them. And I think that's a disservice on the part of both the education system and on the part of DDD to provide, that the continuation, so they don't feel that, you've gone from, yes, we're going to nurture you and help you to, you're 21, you're on your own.
Yeah, I not to belabor the point, but I completely agree. And I think, we've got to find a way, again, to across the board. So every student, with a disability has the same opportunity. And it's hard because we have over 600 school districts and they do things differently. And that's sort of the way the system is set up. But if we could provide some kind of resource that families, and then the students could turn to and ask questions about, all these things that they need to know as they transition. So by the time they get to 21, to your point, Michael, they're on the road to success, whether that's in employment, whether that's day programs, whether that's a continuing education. And then there are all these other issues that individuals and families have to deal with. I think there's a way to do that. And I think, again, my suggestion is to provide that resource in the form of a support coordinator or something, just somebody that you could turn to and sort of, ask questions of.
What I can tell you as well is that as part of the community practice, some of the stakeholders group, we have been meeting with SPAN and inviting some of the younger folks to come and join us and learn some of the tools so that as people are starting to graduate, they have the idea of what their dream is, what they look for in their future, looking at the trajectory of their life, looking at the next steps, what else is out there in the community, so that people are more educated when they're going to the table with their exit IEP, and figuring out what it is they want to do in the next step of their life and what their next step in their plan is. So we are trying to get the word out as we are working with more and more families, and get them as educated as possible for, figuring out what the next step is, and that it may not be a traditional day, it may be something, more towards employment, something more creative, thinking outside the box, and really celebrating the successful stories for people to see that there is possibilities, and they are really out there and looking towards the next step in the trajectory of a person's life. So we're trying to get the word out as much as possible to families, and to hope that other families will get the word out to more families and get it to trickle down, as well as support coordinators, school districts, school systems, any other stakeholders that may be involved, provider agencies, just really trying to get the word out there so that it from the older folks in our system to the younger folks coming into the system. We are really trying to celebrate successes and next steps and help people see that there are endless possibilities.
If I could just add one more thing, one of the things that haunts me, and I've made it a point, a lot of people still don't know in this state that the Office of the Ombudsman exists. And so we've been trying to do everything possible to sort of get the word out through articles in the newspaper, through accepting any invitation we get, throwing my business cards everywhere, really trying to do anything and everything. And what haunts me is I never get contacted by anybody from Newark. I never get contacted by anybody from Jersey City. I never get contacted by anybody from Camden, Elizabeth. I could go through. Patterson's one of the exceptions, and that's just because I met some families early on in Patterson, so I've been working with them on a bunch of issues. And that tells me that folks are just falling off the cliff. They're probably not in the system because, unlike up to 21, where it's it's an entitlement, through special education and other things. After 21, it's not. And I think a lot of these families just fall off the cliff. And again, it haunts us because I know there are people, with developmental disabilities in Newark. I know there are people with developmental disabilities in these other cities, except they're not reaching out. And I think there's a problem. I think there's a disconnect. So we need to find a way to sort of connect with these families while they're still in school and sort of help walk them, if you will, into the adult services world.
So you're going to get an invitation to an Essex County event where you will meet families from Newark. So I wanted just to make a reminder to anyone that if they have questions, to please put them in the chat. And I also got a comment that CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, has a transition program that does help walk parents through their adult medical transition as well as school. So that's a resource I wanted to share.
Okay, Patricia, this is a follow-up to the question on housing. This comment is, can you tell Tricia that families are being told by the support coordinators that housing vouchers are only given in emergencies due to imminent homelessness?
So you can contact me and let me see what I can do for next steps for whoever is making that question available.
Yeah, this follow-up was when was the hold lifted? We're talking about supportive housing connection subsidies. We have been told by Courtney Davey only people facing immediate peril or threat of homelessness can access SHC subsidies since March.
Right. Okay. So yeah, contact me. I will work with Courtney and see where we are with next steps. I know that the folks who are being reached on the priority waiting list, and folks who have been coming through with their intensive case management have been able to access these vouchers. So just contact me and I'll figure out the next steps.
Okay, this is just a follow-up comment. There's a conversation happening around support coordinators being assigned to individuals who live in pediatric residential environments prior to transitioning to DDD residential. like graduates who are not residentially placed, have access to. It would greatly benefit for the support coordinator to learn about someone's likes, wants, needs from the current provider prior to transition from the pediatric system with only a DDD case manager who will give up the case in 30 days.
So what I can tell you is that the DDD case management, because of the Medicaid, the way in which our waiver system works and the way in which the Medicaid numbers go, the DDD staff person acts as a support coordinator. So they get all that information and they write the plan, and then they have a smooth transition, or at least that's the way which it should happen. They would have a smooth transition to and a handoff to the support coordinator that's assigned. So it should work in that fashion, that the DDD, the transition worker, will act as a support coordinator during that time period, and then when a new support coordinator is assigned, it should be a smooth transition and handoff to the next person. So that's the way in which it should happen. I don't know if I cannot speak to every case, but I can tell you that that's the way in which it should happen, is that the transition worker would be working that case as the support coordinator and acting as a support coordinator. So I can tell you that my staff who are in the special projects unit, for anybody who's out of the state of New Jersey, placed by the school system or placed for some reason, one reason or another, or has been reaching the priority waiting list in a skilled nursing facility and wants to be moving out, we act as the transition case manager, acts as the support coordinator, writes the plan, gets to know the likes and dislikes of the person, make sure that there's a pre-placement meeting taking place, which everybody knows all of this information. And then they work with the support coordinator for that smooth handoff to make sure that they know all of that information as well.
Again, and that might work a lot of the time, and most of the time for a lot of families. But again, I go back to the point I was making, and I think the person that wrote in that question was saying that's just sometimes not enough time. And there's got to be a way to sort of touch families and connect with families earlier and in a more meaningful way. Again, that might work for a lot of families, but 60 days may not be enough, you know what I mean? And I still think we're missing a lot of folks. I think, and I really hope we do this, and I know I'm a bit of a bandwagon on this, but I really want us to sort of look to doing this earlier, because the transition can and should be smoother, and it's just not for a lot of folks. Again, a lot of families might be benefiting. I have a feeling we're just not getting a lot of them. So.
Okay, another question. Some friends attend ARC Workplace and have not started back to work. Do you know when they would reopen again?
This is like a workshop, ARC workshop, or?
These would be workshops like the Work Opportunity Center or any of the ARC provided workplaces.
They've been given the green light. They have to meet certain health standards and certain protocols. And I know each one's different, so I don't know. But they've been given the green light to do so. They just might have their own reasons why they haven't done so far.
Now, I was going to say the same thing, that we have given the green light for folks to open, but as everything throughout the different parts of the state have made their own accommodations for what it is that they need. I know different schools have done different things. Different workplaces have done different things. That agency is planning on doing.
Okay, I would ask if we have any more questions or comments, put in the chat box. Nature abhors silence, so we need to have somebody speak.
I've got a lot more to say if you want me just to talk. Joking.
Please, Paul, go ahead.
No, I'm just joking. I was just joking.
You could actually talk about.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry, I have really bad audio. I said you could talk about your report. I think people would be interested.
I mean, I'll talk a little bit about it in case they're not interested. So the report, again, I try to use the report to be a tool, if you will, and a resource for folks. In fact, I hyperlink a lot of things in the report for folks that may not be aware of familiar with certain situations, certain issues and others. But, again, I divided the report into systemic observations and specific issue-specific ones. And it all comes from my conversations I've had over the past year with individuals and families. None of this is sort of stuff I'm making up. And the systemic things, I start off by, speaking to an issue that's familiar to anybody in the system, and that's the complexity of the system. It is a very complex system. Again, a lot of good resources, a lot of good people working at all levels of government and in the advocacy community and what have you. But it's so complex. And the complexity itself, I think, is a barrier to people getting the services and supports they need. And we've got to find ways to simplify it. I know there is work being done on this, but it's not enough. It is so overwhelming. There are so many offices with so many acronyms, with so many responsibilities and so many different divisions. And, it's overwhelming. And as we know, those of us who, come from families with disability, this is tough. And life is tough enough and challenging enough. And so anything we can do, big things and small things to make it less complex, I think would be better. I speak in the report about the need for a sense of urgency. There are a lot of good people. When I talk about the system, I'm not just talking about state government. I'm talking about county, I'm talking about municipal, I'm talking about people throughout different, the nonprofit world. There are a lot of good people who really want to do the right thing, but what's too often missing is a sense of urgency, recognizing that when a family needs something, they often need it now. And to say, okay, well, look into it and get back to them in a week or 2 weeks, that's not good enough. We're talking about families that often don't, they don't operate Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It's nights and weekends. These are folks that oftentimes don't go on vacations. They don't go out to dinner. They need things now. And we need to feel and give expression to that sense of urgency too. Even if we can't get to yes with somebody, we need to sort of have that, recognize that there's a need to there's a time sensitivity to things. I speak at length in the report about the need for more choice and more exceptions and more, focus on really being person-centered. It's really important that we have rules and regulations on this and that, but these are individuals, and we all know that individuals are individual, and one situation is not going to be similar to the next one. And so if somebody doesn't fit squarely into the box, then we need to sort of step back and take a look at it and say, how can we get to yes? How can we give this person the supports and services that they need? I think, again, a lot of well-meaning folks, but I don't think it happens enough. And again, I'll caveat it again. People come to me when there's a problem. So I'm not hearing all the success stories, but I see it too often, people being told no because they don't need this, this, and this, or they can't use this budget because it falls in that bucket and not that bucket. We need to take more of a person-centered approach to things. I speak also in the report about the need to really focus more on rights of folks, civil and human rights of folks. I mean, and we've seen this during the sort of the pandemic. A lot of people are going out and about and, throughout our community, throughout the state, but a lot of our folks are still locked up in group homes. A lot of our folks are still, being told they can't do this and they can't do this. They can't have family visits. We need to sort of put more of a premium on folks on their civil and human rights. It's not easy always. It's not easy, and it's a balancing check all the time. Nothing we do in this world, in this space, is easy. But we need to be, sort of mindful of people's civil rights and human rights. And one of the things I talk about throughout the report, and I can go on and on about this, is one of the biggest challenges, and I think one of the biggest problems, if you will, that we in the disability community face is there's not enough of us in sort of jobs and on committees and stuff like that. We need more folks with disabilities and more family members sitting in offices, government committees, and not just committees that deal with disability issues, but all committees, right? Diversity in the workplace needs to include people with disabilities and their family members. And I say that because, we all recognize the importance of diversity, having gender, a balance, ethnic, racial, everything. We recognize that people bring different perspectives to bear on issues, and that produces better policy. But too often, that person representing somebody with a disability is not at that table. And one example I use, and then I'll stop talking. Okay. One example I use, and I think it really speaks very loudly to this point, is the whole issue of banning plastic straws. We know nationally and as well as locally here in New Jersey, there's been an effort to ban plastic bags, and alongside that has been plastic straws. Sounds like a good environmental policy, right? Because plastic's bad for the environment. But I gotta believe that whether it was in Sierra Club or some state senator's office, wherever it was that came up with this idea of banning plastic straws, had there been somebody in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy, that idea would never have made it out of that room, right? Because a lot of folks with physical disabilities require plastic straws for their nourishment and for their hydration. And no one wants to hurt people, right? That require, but they don't think. Why would you think? If you don't have it in your family, if you don't know this from personal experience, you wouldn't think of doing that. Fortunately, the legislation that's got enacted in New Jersey and signed into law makes an exception for plastic straws that they have to be provided upon request, and that's just good policy, right? But again, if we don't have people with disabilities and their family members in the workplaces, in every department, everywhere, we're not going to have good policy. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges. I'll stop there. Although I could go on.
To your plastic straw issue, though, who knows that? Because I've never heard of it. I know that they ban plastic straws. I know they ban plastic bags, but I didn't know there was an exception for someone who requests a plastic straw.
Well, that's something. So that just happened. That just got signed into law, and that's something we need to broadcast. But we need to, at the very least, we need to make sure that when somebody goes into a Starbucks and they need a plastic straw, they can say, "I want a plastic straw." They don't have to explain why. They just need a plastic straw, and they should be given one. And that's what our law is intended to do. Again, it just got signed into law. But getting the word out is one thing, but we need to make sure that our laws and our rules and our policies reflect people with disabilities and their family members. Again, not just sort of in our DDD space and stuff like that. I'm talking about the Department of Transportation, Department of Environmental Protection. We just need that. And I think there's some obvious reasons why that doesn't exist. A lot of times our folks, there are barriers to it, and not just physical barriers to us, but time barriers. It's hard to get a family member, a mother, who's got an adult child with autism and severe challenging behaviors may not have the time or the wherewithal to sort of, run for Congress or something. You know what I mean? So there's some obvious barriers, but we need to do everything we can to make sure that every workplace has somebody with disability, has a family member, something, just so that sort of, that the group of people making decisions represent gender, racial, ethnic, and disability, as well as other background factors.
Okay, I have another question. What initiatives is DDD offering residential providers to open enhanced medical and behavioral homes? The one-time $90,000 contribution was wonderful, but agencies need ongoing incentives to serve people with long-term heightened support needs, which often require highly experienced professionals. It goes on. In their environment 24/7, requiring more support than the budget typically provides for.
Tricia, did you want to answer that? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Did I get that all out?
So I can tell you that there's been a few recent RFPs for some additional enhanced behavioral support housing, because I'm part of the calls that happen every other day about different things that are going on and updates. Part of that team, the Director of Housing, Amy Scartocci, has been looking at different proposals and different requests that have come in. And we have been working on enhancing some support needs and enhancing housing. And as Amy's been working diligently with the Supportive Housing Connection and a whole host of other groups to get some stuff up and running, we are actively working on it.
and I'll just add to that, and I can attest to that. I mean, I've seen that. One of the things in New Jersey, like in other places, we've gone from from the Olmstead decision by the Supreme Court in 1999, from institutionalization down to sort of four-person group homes, and and so it went from one extreme, if you will, to another. And while group homes work really well for folks, sometimes a four-person group home is a great setting. It's not, we have a lot of individuals with different individual needs, particularly those on sort of either with the severe challenging behaviors or those with medical complexities. And so over the last several years, I mean, I've seen it even before I got this job, somewhat of an awareness to the fact that we can't have one size fits all, types of housing. And so there's been a real effort to sort of expand it and to try to be more innovative and try to meet the needs of these populations. We're not there yet. And with a lot of, particularly, I guess, with those with significant behaviors and those with medical complexities. But I do think we're heading in the right direction. We need to just speed it up because we just, there are folks with a lot of needs, obviously.
But one of the things that I can say is that when we started the whole aspect of people having control of their own budgets and being in charge and being in the driver's seat, so that started in 2000. And I remember clearly sitting at the table with a core group of family members, some of them who were on the Regional Family Support Family Planning Council. And they said, if you gave us the budget dollars, we could do this so much better. And we did that. We started, in small increments. And then and that's when I first met Mike. We started with small increments and said, those are the families that said, give us the budget, we can do it better. And they did. And you've been doing it better and you've been using the budget. And now everybody has their budget so that like needs get like supports with like resources, but we have all been pick and choose how we spend our days and what we do. And it also gets back to asking that why question I talked about earlier with the community of practice. But why are we doing it this way? What is it that we want to need? What is the trajectory for somebody's life? What are our hopes? What are our dreams for the future? How can I use my budget? How can I use my community? Where can I tap into the best resources within my actual community, within my family, within my technology, figuring out what those next steps would be. And we now have the ability, it's not just, there was a time where it was, here's your contracting menu of services, and this is what DDD offers. Now it's, here is your DDD community care program or supports program budget, because we now have 2 waivers. Here's your budget. How would you like to spend it with your waivable services? And dare to dream. What are you looking for? What can you use your community for? What can you use technology for? What can you use your natural resources, your gifts for? And then your family. And then what else can your eligibility-based specific resources for? So we really changed the way that people are thinking about it. We really want to continue to change the way people think about it, because it isn't just, here's your DDD menu of services. What do you need? Well, what do you got? It's really, this is what I want. These are my hopes and dreams. And this is what I don't want. This is what I don't want for my future, my son or my daughter, and these are the things that I do want, or for myself. These are things that I do want. And how am I going to get there? What are the barriers that may come through through the door? And how can we mitigate those barriers? And then what's going to get us to that dream through the trajectory. So we have been slowly making, changes as we've gone along the way. And we're really getting, now that almost everybody has been converted to the fee-for-service system, we need to get back to our roots of how can we be creative within the fee-for-service system? How can we make things work? How can we get the most out of our budget, but also our community, also technology, because technology is amazing these days. We're all talking to each other through a electronic call right now, where I typically would have driven to Monmouth County and come to you all at night. So technology has just changed the way in which we're doing things. So really looking at what's going to work for folks within their budget, within their waiver program, and making things get to that next step.
If I could go back to the residential part of the question, a lot of the families we deal with, and again, maybe by the nature of this office, we deal with families that their adult child or their minor child have severe challenging behaviors, or we deal with folks that have significant medical complexities, and they're concerned, is not necessarily, dreaming and thinking like that. It's life and death in their minds. And I don't want to, sort of overstate the point. It's the safety, you know what I mean? And so we talk about medical group homes, the need for more medical group homes, maybe more need for intermediate care facility beds. These are folks that are concerned that their child, minor child or adult child, won't be alive unless they have the right environment, have the right nursing supports. Residential, again, we deal with, there was a hearing a couple of weeks ago by the Assembly Human Services Committee about abuse and neglect. It was a 5-hour hearing about, so there are many, components to this world, and there's some folks that are excelling, and, as Tricia's talking about, and how can we sort of help them get to the next level and sort of, help them sort of live out their aspirations and their dreams and stuff. But there are a lot of folks just sort of on a very basic level saying, I need a home. I need a campus-like surrounding. I need a medical group home. I need something so my son and daughter will be safe on a real basic level. And that we need to do a better job of. I can't tell you, again, folks come to us, and then again, by the nature, I'll keep carry-oning it, but there's a lot of them. And there's a lot of them that are falling through the cracks, and they're concerned. They're concerned because they can't. And, even with their self-directing budgets, they're constantly told that they can't pay over $20, $25 an hour for staff, and they need specialized staff. And so the system is again, great in many respects, a lot of resources, but there are folks falling through the cracks, and we need to do a better job meeting their needs.
I'm still looking for additional questions, so just give me a minute.
I'll use the opportunity of silence to, just tell you, a family I visited the other day, minor child is self-injurious, is aggressive. His siblings, every time he has a crisis, which is on a daily basis, have to lock themselves in their room. He has to wear headgear, protective headgear, because he punches himself in the head multiple times. They're looking for out-of-home placement, and they're just being told you have to wait. And so these are some of the families that we deal with, and there is a lack of beds. There are a lack of crisis beds in this children's system. There are a lack of level 2 beds for folks with high level of needs. Again, these might be outliers, but if they are, there are a lot of outliers. My email box, my phone voicemail is full of these folks who are crying for help because even just from a residential perspective, we don't have anything to offer them. And we don't offer them, out of state placement in the adult system, and in the children's system, we do so reluctantly. And I understand that from a financial perspective, but if we don't have what it takes to meet these families' needs, then we need to do better. And so, again, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but there's just, these are the families and the individuals we deal with. They're challenged and they're scared. I'll never forget, and I put it in my last annual report, a comment made, I heard, right before Governor Murphy was elected, we had a meeting with about 14 family members and our current First Lady, Tammy Murphy, and going around the room, and the families were sort of sharing their experience, just in a couple of minutes each. And we got to one father, and he said, unlike most other parents, we want to outlive our children. And, that is, heartbreaking, compelling, but so all of us come from disability families. We get it. We understand that. It's not natural to want to outlive your children, but people are afraid. People are afraid to, who's going to take care of my loved one, my child, my son, my daughter when I'm gone? These are the things that need to drive us. These are the things that need to sort of just make us so we never say no to somebody. So we're always rolling up our sleeves and trying to figure out how to get to yes, how to give these individuals and families the supports they need.
That's a good lead in. That's a good lead into the next question about the state provided funding for guardianship in the past. With all the budget constraints, we understand that has stopped. Are there any plans to easy for me to say, resurrect or provide some kind of subsidies for families who really can't afford it but need guardianship?
I don't know if Tricia, you were going to answer that or not. I'm not aware of any. I'll just say to do so.
I'm not
I'm sorry.
aware of anything. I was trying to hit my unmute button. I'm not aware of anything at this point to be able to work towards a stipend for that at this point. I do know that there are some, legal aid type places throughout the state of New Jersey that have been able to assist.
I will say on the larger issue of guardianship and sort of legal status of individuals, I think this is one of the most important questions and issues that an individual and a family have to deal with. And I think not enough folks understand it. Folks don't, I've met families who, their adult child is, in their 20s and, they should have guardianship, but they never pursued it. And I've also met folks that think it's sort of just a natural thing that at 18, you're supposed to get guardianship when you don't necessarily need to. And that doesn't necessarily, doesn't make sense. It's such an important issue because we're talking about the independence of an individual. And to the extent, that someone doesn't need guardianship, that someone that can make their own decisions, benefit from what they call supportive decision making, we should encourage that, and we should educate folks about that. Or if they need some more limited sort of things like a power of attorney, that might be more appropriate. Giving one of the parents or somebody. Or sometimes guardianship is the right thing to do. I just don't. I think again, going back to my support coordinating idea at age 18, I think having that resource, having somebody who can help direct them and point them in the right direction to get educated on these issues, I think is extremely important because again, it is probably one of the most important, most consequential decisions an individual and a family make.
And I just wanted to share that I heard recently there's a new resource on the Department of Ed, Office of Special Education website about alternatives to guardianship.
Yeah, it is a good resource. It was done by the Department of Education, DDD, and I think Department of Labor. I think they did it, or maybe Department of Children and Families. I don't know, 3 departments sort of work together on that. That is a good resource.
Again, if you have questions, please type them in the chat.
So I'm gonna fill the silence for a moment, just because we're in the political season, and I like to point out something. One of the things I do when I explain the office is I like to point out the bipartisan origins of this office, and I think that's extremely important. And I got to tell you, one of the opportunities I have, in this position is I meet with legislators, I work with legislators, and I can tell you it is across the board, Republican, Democrat, Assembly, Senate, whatever. Everybody wants to do the right thing. And I think that really says something because we live in highly partisan, highly political times. That on our issues, that it really is common ground, and I think it's a real opportunity for us here in New Jersey because all of our leadership, all the folks again want to do the right thing, and I think that's something that we should recognize and celebrate because again, it is unfortunately a little too rare these days.
I wanted to ask Tricia if she has a ghost in her house because the light behind her keeps going on and off.
I don't know why that's happening. I may have a ghost in my house. You don't even want to know the story on my house, so we'll go from there. I'll tell you that another time, Mike. There is a hermit crab behind my head, though. He's been alive for 8 years.
Oh.
8 years. He's the creepiest hermit crab ever. He shows up in all my videos. And Rebecca, I'll send you a picture of him because I took pictures of him the last time because he's huge for a hermit crab. He's been alive for 8 years. Hermit crabs don't usually live that long.
I will ask one more time if anybody has any questions to please put in the chat. But if we don't get anything shortly, we'll conclude. So this is your last chance.
And Mike, is it possible, or Rebecca, to make our email addresses available to folks and if they have any questions? Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And if anybody has any questions that or anything else they want to bring up after this, they can contact me at my email address, which I will put out. Why not? It's very simple. It's mbrill@att.net. For those of you that have a phonetic alphabet, it's Mike Bravo Romeo India Lima Lima at Alpha Tango Tango dot November Echo Tango.
Yeah, the rest of ours are a bit more complicated than that. Any closing thoughts from our speakers?
I want to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to come and talk to you, and also to share that if you do have any questions or you just need some clarification on something, you can always shoot an email over to me. If I don't know the answer, I will get you the correct answer, and search for it if I need to, figure out where to go for it. But I do want to thank you. Working with the Regional Family Support Planning Councils has been wonderful because we're able to get some of the information out to families and utilize you as a resource to get more information to families and to change the way in which we're working with families. And we value your partnership with us. And I just want to thank you again.
And I'll take ditto to that and thank you. Thanks for hosting this. Thanks for making this opportunity available. And, just encourage people if they have any questions, like Tricia said, email us, contact us. We're here to help anyway. So, thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody. Tricia, Paul, I appreciate taking the time out of your schedule to speak to these folks and to provide some insights. Rebecca, I want to thank you for your IT support. Now that you realize that now you will be the IT expert for the council.
Oh, you're in big trouble.
So based on that, I will thank you all for this evening, and I will hopefully speak to you soon.
And we are getting some thank yous in the chat. So I wanted to let you know we're getting some comments that this was a wonderful event. And thank you so much for hosting. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good